Afghanistan's deputy head of intelligence has been killed in a suicide attack outside a mosque in the Laghman province in the east of the country. The Taliban have claimed responsibility for the bomb and admit Abdullah Laghmani was targeted. 22 others died in the blast. In a recent assessment, the commander of NATO and U.S. forces in Afghanistan, General Stanley McChrystal, said a new strategy is needed to defeat Taliban. For more on this, now we can go to artist Alyona Minkovsky, who is in our Washington studio. Hello to you, Alyona. So does this new strategy mean deploying more troops?
Well, that's the big question that everybody is asking, because although General Stanley McChrystal did submit a report on the situation in Afghanistan, it for now is being kept pretty secret. And officials are saying that at this moment it doesn't include a request for more troops, but that it very well may in the future, which isn't very good news for this 57% of Americans that are now opposed to this war, according to a recent poll. And there's also talk that part of this new strategy might include sending in more combat troops and switching them out for those that are just in support systems. So while technically the amount of troops won't really increase, the number of those that are in more dangerous scenarios just might. Now, here to discuss it with me is Dr. Lawrence Korb from the Center for American Progress. Thank you for joining me today.
My pleasure.
So my first question to you is this switching strategy. Have you heard anything about this?
Well, basically what you're going to is a counterinsurgency strategy as opposed to counterterrorism. And what counterinsurgency means is you send troops into populated areas, they get rid of the enemy, in this case the Taliban, and then they remain. And that's why you're going to need more troops on the ground to be able to do that.
But why haven't they been doing that all along? Wasn't the point to go in there and get rid of the Taliban?
Well, the problem was that because the Bush administration focused so much attention on Iraq, they simply didn't have the troops or the resources. I mean, this war has been under-resourced now for going on 8 years, and the real question is, can you turn it around?
Yeah, and can they turn it around? At this point, a lot of Americans, like I said, this poll says that 57% of them are opposed to the war. This is growing. What's going to happen next?
Well, you've got two issues. One, can you turn it around strategically? And I think General McChrystal seems to think so. The second question is, can you convince the American people to spend the blood and treasure to do it? And that's a separate issue.
But General McChrystal and Lieutenant General McCullen seem to have opposite views on this, too. I heard that General McChrystal's assessment does have some positive things to say, whereas McCullen is just saying that things are going all wrong there. Who can we really
Well, I mean,
to?
obviously, Stan McChrystal is your commander. He has been put in there. They relieved General Kiernan to take his place. The president put him in there. He's his person, so I think he's got to rely on him.
And what else do you think that we can expect to be inside of this report once, if any of it is made public?
Well, I think what you'll find out is how bad the situation is. And it's not only just on the ground in terms of protecting the population and the gains that the Taliban has made. I think that surprised people how effective the Taliban is in fighting. But the problems you're having with the government. A lot of people had hope with the election we could get the government to do what it should be doing. But if anything, it'd probably make the government worse, because of all the alleged fraud in the election.
And so just one more time, I want to get this clear. Is just sending more combat troops actually going to help reduce the power of the Taliban, or is this just another strategy that may or may not work?
Well, it should reduce the power of the Taliban, but the real question is what happens next? Will the Afghan security forces be able to come in and take over? The one good thing you have for it, the most respected institution in Afghanistan is the Army. And unlike Iraq, they're not riveted by sectarian rivalry. So I do think that if you can do that, you'll be able to stabilize the situation. You'll be able to have the Afghans take over. But it's not going to happen in 6 months. It's going to take a couple of years. And the real question is the administration willing to spend the political capital to convince the American people to keep sending men and women to die, as well as spend significant amounts of money?
That's a great question. Well, thank you very much for joining us today. And back over to you in Moscow for now, Olga.
Well, thank you to you, Alyona, and to your guest. That was artist Alyona Minkovsky talking to Lawrence Korb from the Center for American Progress.